Ambassador, what are the biggest takeaways, the biggest learning lessons in the past 40 days for India?
Well, I would say that a big takeaway is that India needs to actually further strengthen its strategic autonomy, its foreign policy based on strategic autonomy. We have to reach out to all sides. There is no doubt about it. And we saw that during the last 40 days, the way Prime Minister Modi, as you quite correctly pointed out, his focus on dialogue and diplomacy, de-escalation and cessation of hostilities. But he was able to speak to all the leaders, whether it was President Masoud Pezeshkian of Iran, whether it was President Donald Trump, whether it was a leader of Israel or UAE or Qatar or all the other Gulf countries. So this was a very important factor, in addition, of course, to speaking to all the leaders from the European Union and others. A very important factor.
But Ambassador, my apologies for interjecting here. There is a perceived tilt that analysts are talking about. They're saying it took 13 plus days of, for formal grief over the Iranian civilian deaths. There was delayed high-level outreach to Iran. Did we miss the bus on any of those points?
No, I think that, when you talk of strategic autonomy, it's something that exists all the time, but when you bring it into operation, it depends. The timing also is something that you have to choose and look at. And I think that, the very fact that our Prime Minister was in direct contact, telephonic conversation with Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian, and how Iran had been very ready and willing to let Indian oil tankers and LPG tankers pass, in a very careful, unscathed and comfortable manner through the Straits of Hormuz without any difficulty. India was in the very first list of countries that were included in the countries who were considered friendly countries whose tankers would be allowed to pass through, like China or Russia or India or Iraq or Pakistan, countries like that. So I think it's their timing and so on. One can always discuss these small things, but I don't think that would have, made any difference. And I think that the spontaneous reaction within India to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's passing away, that it showed completely. There was absolutely a very strong outburst of feeling for that, and that was important and significant. And that's I think all right. But one can always look at improvement at the margin. But the basic factor is that we have to strengthen this. And of course, we know that even now that the ceasefire is taking place, our foreign ministers and so on. But I think the second part is what you said about the integrated nature of this defense. The defense theaters today, they're completely integrated, from cyber attacks to drones to land warfare. In this case, there were no boots on the ground, so one saw a very different kind, almost like a video game kind of an approach to warfare. Only it was very, very real, and very sharp weapons were being employed, and we saw that Iran had prepared for it very well, and they had been able to use technology in a way that they were able to overcome a much more powerful and much more well-financed series of weaponries on the other side. And for every minor, inexpensive drone or the swarms of drone that Iran was able to use, the Gulf countries and Israel had to use very expensive THAAD missiles and others, which was in the millions for each interceptor being fired, whereas the Iranian cost was much lower. So that was a very, very astute way in which Iran was able to bring about its defense. And we ourselves have learned from Operation Sindoor, where we saw last year how, when the Pakistanis tried the drones, they swarms of drones, they put it across, but we were able to intercept each and every one of them, some of them with domestic technology. So, but of course, this is on a much greater scale, so it's something very big. And I think another aspect which is very important is that there are fallouts of this kind of a very intense war, and the fallout on the economy is very serious and very grave. So certainly energy security is very, very big, and we've been able to diversify very quickly. Now we're getting much more from Russia. We're probably getting some more gas, LPG from Russia as well. So we have been able to diversify, but how critical it is, how critical the supply chains are, and how important it is not to depend on any one place with such a huge over-dependence is a big lesson, a big takeaway. And to develop your own, I mean, Great Nicobar, for example, is waiting to be exploited, waiting to come on stream so that we can, really reduce our dependence on imported oil and gas. And on the economic side, I mean, the whole question of being the Atmanirbharta, that has come out in such a big way.
Exactly.
Something in a big way
I
that
did want to ask you, how do we balance out the Vishwa Bandhu and the Vishwa Guru roles that India sets out to play?